Hello. Hoping to see a few friendly faces here soon, but we are here on Family Chat with Sanctuary. Just around to have conversations about what you want to chat about. If you'd like to say hello in the chat room and let me know you're here, that'd be great. We're totally looking forward to talking about topics that you might have instead of me choosing the topic tonight. And I'll keep my eye peeled. Hey, Melissa, good to see you. And Diego, good to see you. Here in Nashville, we are, the evening has landed, and we are looking towards a really rainy time over the next few days. Hey, Jessica, I'm going to wave. And spent a little time today with one of our brothers in Christ. My husband Jason and I were visiting with Bob this afternoon. It was good to see our friend passing through town. We don't get to see him very often, so it was a real pleasure to be able to set eyes on the person in person. And isn't that the truth? Don't you just really love to be able to see people that you love in person? We don't get to do that very often anymore. Hi, Mark. Good to see you this evening. In my family, my mom and my sisters, I don't live close to them geographically, so FaceTime and occasional visits is all I get to do. But hopefully all of you have one or two people in your life that you get to see in person and spend a little face-to-face time with. It's always such a pleasure. I was reading a little earlier this week. I don't know if any of you are familiar, pardon me for looking down, with a devotional called You Are the Beloved. And it's an old devotional written by Henry Nouwen, Nouwen. But I really treasure this devotional, and I was not familiar with it before a few weeks ago. And what I love about it is it's got such a heart for transparency and intimacy, and really walking you through with a different view how to share love for Christ and how to be a light. And we talk about that so often in our various chats and podcasts, but the inner voice of love and how to love deeply and how to have that bear fruit, and the joy in life that comes from living well with other people. It's something that over the last several months I think has been missing for a lot of us, right? We're not able to meet with people in the same way we once did. Those of you who have chatted with me before, you know that I work in a law firm, and I'm very much part of my daily life is meeting with people, and we've had to figure out other ways to do that. And I think it really calls for us to be creative in how we're gonna spend time with each other. So I'm wondering if you guys want to talk about that at all. It would be great to hear some of the things that you've experienced during pandemic. I know that where my mother lives, she's having some lessening of the restrictions coming up over the next several weeks, which she's really looking forward to. But she's sure blessed. She's been in a senior living situation where she's been able to be with other people, lots of other people. They've been masked and such, but has had the ability to be exposed to being with people far more than the rest of us. Hi, Leslie. Good to see you this evening. The idea that, we've been without that intimate part of our lives where we haven't been able to look at people's faces and hug people with ease and frequency. And I am really blessed where I live. We're not really rural, but we have the same people we see over and over again, so mask wearing isn't as important at home, and certainly with our close friends. So, Amber, you're done with the pandemic for sure. Yeah, if only the pandemic were done with us. Wouldn't that be nice? I think all of us are done with the idea that we want to be living with these restrictions, and we want to be able to see faces other than this. And we want to be able to hug each other and not have to ask first if somebody minds. It is a little awkward. And it can cause us to feel lonely. Those are things that we maybe took for granted before. The idea that we would be sitting around a table and somebody could be expressing a moment of grief, and you could just lean in close and hug and provide comfort without having to worry that you're going to infringe upon a restriction that they might want you to have a mask, or we get tired of thinking about that stuff and the focusing on it and focusing on the news. So many of my friends don't really even spend time on Facebook anymore because it's distressing to not have some uplifting stuff that doesn't talk about that. So are you feeling lonely in the sense of you haven't been able to be with people that you love or used to be with on a regular basis? Or maybe you're feeling lonely because you're real busy and not spending time to be able to listen to the Lord and listen to the things He might be asking you. Hi, Amber. Good to see you this evening. Let's see. Daycare center workers report that the young children are delayed in their speech development because of not being able to, they're not being able to see the mouths, right? And people who are hard of hearing, whether they wear hearing aids or not, they rely a lot on being able to see lips. Even, our brain does that. It sees the lip movement and it automatically can fill in what you can't hear or clarify what you're not hearing accurately. It's a big deal. I can only imagine. Our kids here started school for the first day in a year in the county that I live in here. And gosh, that's a long time to go without being able to see your friends. And think of the socialization that we get when we are with our peers as we grow up and go to school and spend time with each other. It really makes a huge impact on on how we do things later in life. Hey, Jess, you were saying, there's an academic loss many of the kids are experiencing right now. That's so true. And I saw, Jess, in a couple of your posts that you have been actively working hard, getting ready for the kids. And it's something that I know you're very dedicated to, and it sounds like you work with people who are as well, to provide safe space for others. That's a tough assignment, right? We are taking away what comes to us naturally, to be able to reach out to each other and rely on each other to help each other navigate through life from our earliest stages, preschool, kindergarten, the first grades. And if you're abroad, and you have different names for those times in school, ages, 3 through 7, 8, those early years, a good lot of how we learn to be with other people is done through socializing with our peers at that age. If you come from a big family, you do have a benefit of perhaps having several siblings that are near your age group and provide sort of a socializing aspect, although it's, the family dynamics will change that and sometimes not give you as much space and latitude as you need, but it is very difficult. So, done with pandemic. So what are you doing? If there were no restrictions, what are some of the things you'd be doing right now? What would you be going to concerts? Would you just be going to a public space and sitting down and reading a book without a mask on? I mean, what are you missing? Would you go visit a family member that you haven't seen in a long while, or friends? Would you have a party at your house? Would you be traveling? What are some of the things that you'd be excited to be doing? Let's see. Melissa, you say you work in a financial institution, so you come in contact with a lot of people, and mask wearing is weird in all sorts of ways, but it's necessary. Well, sure. And boy, we can't get a straight opinion about that either for more than a few days in a row or a few weeks in a row about mask wearing. Certainly, it provides some cursory protection for sure. Obviously, there is something in between my mouth and my nose and other things. And that's true for other people wearing masks. And there isn't really anything else that we can do short of just not being with other people. So it makes doing life together possible. If you work in a financial institution or an office, places where you provide services to people, and they need to be in space with you and you with them, it's a necessary thing. Are you washing your masks? Do you use disposable masks? Back in the last big century-old pandemic, they had a lot of cases of bacterial pneumonia. It was a little difficult then, and we didn't have the level of toss-away type stuff then as we do now, nor do we have an easy way to do laundry then as we do now. So keeping your masks sanitary must have been a big chore back in 1918 through 1921. Jessica, you say you've been going to church and you miss being surrounded by people. You catch yourself feeling jealous and sad, seeing old movies and seeing people in crowds. Yeah, that's something. So my husband and I, we watch, we stream shows, and we don't binge watch in the sense that we stay up 24 hours or anything, but we'll watch a show, from beginning to end, seasons at a time, a few episodes here and there. And it is very different, right? Versus watching current shows that are showing people in masks, along with a lot of other social and political things that are going on now, and those are written into the TV shows as well. Jess, I think I enjoy the absence of that being in the older shows as well. Just being able to watch a drama unfold. No masks. No social manipulation. Just a good story unfolding, like reading a good book. That it's made things very different, and it would be interesting to see. We have all these recordings of us now. I mean, everybody's got a phone, and we video regularly ourselves doing the most remarkable and not necessarily interesting things, but there'll be tons of footage around for people in future years to look back on and think, what the heck? But it's such a good point. We have movies and TV shows from the past that are of a different time, right? And I'm sure that a century ago, people must have thought they would never return to a time where they wouldn't have to wear a mask and they wouldn't have to worry about being sick. And there wasn't vaccines back then to alter that. And yet life did go on. And it's not the first time in history where entire populations have experienced a significant decrease due to illness that swept through the population. Our ability to travel now is such that we can spread that more easily, but certainly whatever normal was, this won't go on forever, and there will be a time in our future that this will be past. So it's good to be able to spend a little time carving out space to figure out what's really important, what kinds of things that you're not able to do now that you hope to never have to do without again. And maybe you discovered some new things that you've been able to enjoy more, that you'd like to keep in your life, even when things become more open. Certainly, I think being able to celebrate with people in person, either worshiping together or a celebration of special events, anniversaries, celebration of life for people who are no longer with us. Being able to join with each other and in the happy moments and the sad moments, but being able to just be with each other. That's a real blessing. Any of you guys have any questions about Sanctuary? I know that you've seen Pastor Bob out and about with some new gear. He's very excited about Sanctuary hoodies. I do have one in the house, but I didn't think to have it handy with me. And you'll notice that in his podcast, he's got color. You'll notice his plaid, the red, right? If you definitely enjoy seeing him have color, share that with him, because the minute he doesn't need the extra shirt underneath, it's all black. Anyway, I started to mention a little bit ago that I've been spending time in this devotional by Henry Nouwen, and the whole month of February is about the inner voice of love, and being able to spend time. The idea is that maybe sometimes loneliness is not a void so much as not making time to be with yourself spiritually. So it's not that you're not lonely, but sometimes the source of the loneliness isn't being without others, it's being without Jesus, or being without yourself, not spending the time you need to identify why you're feeling lonely. Maybe the loneliness has got more to do with us being busy and not spending time doing the things that God would ask us to do. And if you don't carve out the space to be quiet and sit alone without being distracted, so that your mind can naturally kind of flow unprompted from one thing to the next. You don't have to just have a blank mind, but things can come into your mind and you can let them flow out, and then do that over and over again, and you just be searching your inner mind. Are you afraid of something? Are you upset about something? Is there a reason that being by yourself feels lonely, rather than being by yourself be a time where you can spend quiet time with yourself and with Jesus? When we want to be occupied, sometimes we're just doing that as a distraction. It requires awareness, right? It requires that we actually be, I'm alone and I'm having anxiety, or I'm feeling a little awkward about that. And why? And looking inward instead of busying ourselves with helping somebody or just occupying ourselves with a myriad of tasks that keeps our mind from sitting in the quiet and answering some of those questions. Because that's a big deal. Can have a lot of things going in and out of our minds, and we just shove them aside. We do that. We spend our time focusing on a task list. I was thinking tonight that I am oversubscribed in every aspect of my life, making it difficult for me to sit in a moment of quiet, because other than going to bed at night, I don't have a lot of moments of quiet right now. And that's been a little true for about 14 days. And as a result of that, I was even struggling to do live chat, right? We're trying to figure out among all of us who's going to pick up what times. And I hadn't done night in a long time, so I said, hey, yeah, I'll pick that up. But this is when I do a lot of things in my home, and I have a whole host of things waiting to be done, and to carve out the time to sit here and chat with you guys, to be able to answer questions or talk about whatever's on your mind. It's a no-brainer. I totally love doing it, so I'm glad to be here. And the idea that those other things would pop up just means, hey, the priority needs to be carving out the time and not be so oversubscribed, right? Do you ever find that happens to you? You accept an extra measure of something in an area of your life, and the next thing you know, an extra measure is needed in a different area of your life, and suddenly you realize, I now have no space, no available time, no flexibility, and that creates a sense of urgency. Has that happened to you? I've had it happen a whole bunch of times in my life. I just try to be more cogent about it, now, recognize it when it's happening, and not wait until I've become tired out and burned out and stressed out and anxious. Instead, recognize it at the front end. It's like, oh, okay, I need to pick up a little extra time here. So, anybody else going to church besides Jess? I know that a lot of people have been able to attend services through Zoom or some sort of digital media streaming type thing. But there are a lot of places around the United States and the world that are meeting in person. Anybody else being able to have that experience, either with social distancing or maybe not much because it's such a small crowd. That corporate worship, being able to be with each other. And Jess, your church has a drum circle, right? That you've shared videos a couple of times. Well, that is a really special thing. And I wonder, do you ever have flutes with that as well? Native American flutes or anything along those lines that gets to join in with it. That would be super, that would be different. Not so much if that's what you get to experience on a somewhat regular basis, but for everybody else, being able to experience that in a different way and be present physically there so that you can not only just hear it, but you can feel the vibrations of music. Music has this whole physical part of it that when we're not in the same space as where the music's being created, it's a completely different experience. You can turn up the volume on your on a radio or on a record player or whatever, your computer, whatever you're listening to, and it can create vibrations, but it's not the same thing as the physical vibration of percussion or a stringed instrument, and even woodwinds and singing or dancing. All of those are a physical experience if you're physically in the same space. And if you're used to being in a group situation to enjoy those things, trying to do it over Zoom is just not the same, right? I'm not saying you can't have a great experience with it, but what do you think, right? I mean, is that not something to embrace when you get to experience a live interaction with music, singing, instruments playing? Jess, unfortunately, we can't do it as much because of having to be close to one another in the circle. And your pastor's wife does play the flute. That's great. I am so glad you shared that. Amber, my church has been meeting through this whole time. We didn't meet the first weekend of the shutdown last year and 2 weeks last month because some folks were sick. But other than that, we meet. Well, that's amazing too. I am so excited for you. And you sing and dance. Oh, so you have been completely blessed by this the whole time and not suffering like some of the rest of us who haven't had access to that. That is great. Do you have a favorite way to worship with your corporate body when you're able to be with them? I mean, for you personally, is it singing? Is it dancing? Is it playing an instrument? Is it gentle movement, which might as well be dancing, but maybe your feet are kind of glued to the floor? I don't know. I mean, do you have a way that you like to spend that time when you're corporately with other people? And do you have the freedom to be super expressive if that's your thing? I think being able to have access to in-person music is it's a cathartic thing. It releases, right? It helps. Hey, Don, good to see you this evening. Heidi ho in Colorado. I know that Dawn loves music. And Dawn, we're talking about being able to be in corporate worship and the idea that you're physically in a room or an environment where the music is being made and you're able to share in the physicalness of that, the opportunity to feel the vibrations, the rhythm, and hear what comes with live performance. All the subtle nuances that just make it an experience that can embrace you. I mean, it can feel like a warm hug or a familiar comfort, different than listening to a piece of music through a device. Hey, Carter, welcome this evening. Glad to see you. So some of the people in the chat room have been able to have corporate worship in person over the last year, and how special that is, because there's a meeting that my husband and I attend that meets inside of a church. It's not part of the church, but we haven't met in person in, it'll be a year now, in a couple weeks, like March the 16th, it'll be a year, because we live in a populated area and that particular church hasn't resumed meeting in person. That's not true for all the churches in our area, but this one particular church. And there are some that have just gone ahead and met, and which is awesome. But for those that haven't, it's been a whole year. And that's a long time to go without seeing your worship besties, right? I mean, if you do church is the people, not the building kind of church, then hopefully you've been able to see one or two of your friends or more over this time. You've been able to develop a bubble of safety that you're comfortable with. But to not be able to see your body, the rest of your body. I mean, because we are the church, but we are the body. And literally, we've been amputated from each other. What a tough thing to do. People have those people who have had physical amputations of limbs and have the phantom nerve responses that they still experience. I mean, it is different, but yet exactly what we're talking about. You were whole within your body, and now you are without your balance, and that's just a really hard place to be, especially for such an extended period of time. And I will say this, in prior pandemics, we didn't have the medical knowledge that's available now, and we didn't have medical experts back in those times giving quite as much, directing our lives quite so specifically and minutely. And I'm not saying that with a judgment. I'm just saying it was different. And so people didn't go without each other in the same way in those times. And of course, that may be why larger percentages of the populations disappeared, but they weren't without each other. And that's a big deal. Hey, Carter, where are you from, Carter? If you're willing to share that in the chat room. And Amber, if you would share too where you're from, that'd be great. Not a requirement, I'm just interested. I don't usually, when I speak on Friday afternoons, I don't usually just chat, I come with a topic in mind, but tonight we're talking about whatever you guys want to, so feel free to throw things into the chat room that you're interested in speaking about if you have something on your mind. Hi, Patrick. You feel the same way? And yeah, Amber, you have a smaller church right now, so you use iTunes to worship with the originals every week, and you sing it using the words on a huge TV monitor. And some you folks use flags and dance, and some are quiet in their seats. Lots of range for that. Well, so you have a lot of flexibility, but people are together. That's really wonderful in the Cincinnati area. Dawn, we are made to worship together. Yes, and nothing better than spending time with brothers and sisters worshiping together. Yes, right? And that hasn't happened for me personally in a very long while. So the next time we all gather together in person, for any of you that are out there and come our way or we're come your way, we'll have to do that because we are meant for that, and it is very difficult. It is difficult to be without. Sometimes it's hard to quiet your spirit when your spirit's crying out for the very thing that you can't give it. We're not made to be separated from each other like that. We are made to be corporately linked and corporately balanced and available to each other for encouragement. When I was telling you a little bit ago that I'm reading this devotional by Henry Nouwen. I don't remember exactly which day, so let me quickly scroll through this. I'll read to you a little section from this because it's very moving. And Patrick, you miss being in church. You haven't been there for 11 months. I'm with you, dude. I mean, I'm with my church family here because we are the church, not the building. But I hear what you're saying. And yes, there's so many people that have been separated in that way. So Mr. Nouwen, or Pastor Nouwen, I guess he might have been at one time, making God's unconditional love visible. And he talks a little bit, but this section, whenever we forgive instead of getting angry at one another, bless instead of cursing one another, tend one another's wounds instead of rubbing salt into them, hearten instead of discouraging one another, give hope instead of driving one another to despair, hug instead of harassing one another, welcome instead of cold shouldering one another, thank instead of criticizing one another, praise instead of maligning one another. In short, whenever we opt for and not against one another, we make God's unconditional love visible. We are diminishing violence and giving birth to a new community. Wow, that's powerful. I mean, these are things we know, right? But it's difficult there. Hi, Jamie. I am glad to see you join us for a little while tonight. That's great. And Patrick, so you bring up a good point. Are we reaching out to one another? So we're always on one side of that, where nobody's completely balanced, that we are reaching out and people and need somebody to reach to us exactly equally. We're always more in a mode to reach out or more in a mode for somebody to reach out to us. And that vacillates. It goes back and forth in our lives. So if we're struggling, and some people are chronically in struggle because life is not fair and really bad stuff has happened, and they always pretty much are needing people to reach out to them. Others constantly in a mode of reaching out. And if we're doing more of one than the other on a regular basis, we need to find the balance in that, because we are recharged and recalibrated when we can get out of our own need to have people reach out to us, and we can reach out to others and encourage. And conversely, if we spend so much time reaching out to others that we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and accept that we have a need to be cared for, then we can't, that's a recharge option too. So that's a great point, Patrick. And for you to notice that you feel that people haven't really reached out to you, that's a tough place to be, isn't it? I mean, wow. You're not alone. I have felt that way. I have great friends. I have great brothers and sisters in Christ. And I still have, at times, been in a place inside of me where I'm just like, gosh, I haven't heard from anybody in a while. And why? I find if I flip that around and then I reach out, that people do reconnect. And, you know, people are in their own lives and stuff is going on. There's always a way to justify a lack of somebody caring and a lack of our own caring. That's a good point. So are we reaching out to each other on a regular basis and allowing ourselves to encourage one another? And if we find ourselves feeling needy in that way, needful in that way, one of the best ways for that to change is for us to do exactly what we feel like we need somebody to do for us, which is reach out. Let's see, you guys are doing a lot of good talking here. So yeah, you're right, Jess. Sometimes worries can stop people from doing so, even though they want to. I mentioned a little earlier tonight that I'm feeling a little oversubscribed in a lot of areas. So a lot of things I think about doing, I'm struggling to actually execute because I'm a little oversubscribed. But I'm not justifying my lack of action on that. I'm saying that it just is a truth for me, for you, for everybody. And it's a great point you bring up, and we do need to be consciously on top of that for ourselves. Are we reaching out? Are we helping those that we know we love, and they need to hear that, and they need to know we're there for them? And I hope, Patrick, that somebody reaches out to you tonight from your church family. But I'm glad that you've reached out and you're here. And honestly, I consider you part of this family. You're part of my enlarged church group. I realize we don't see each other face to face, but for many of us, we haven't seen each other face to face in months. And so I'm very excited when you join and you participate. It's so appreciated, and you generate a lot of good discussion. So thank you. And yeah, you should reach out to them. It makes a big difference, right? And like I said, sometimes the very thing we struggle with the most, the solution to it is completely within our control by whatever our need is, doing that for somebody else. Because connection's what it's all about. Not who does the connecting specifically, but being connected. So yes, I'm not suggesting we should live unhealthy, unbalanced lives. We definitely want to be in reciprocal relationships. But gosh, some of my friends that I've known for 20 or more years, sometimes we go with long times between talking to each other, or even more a big deal for those that are close to me geographically, we go through waves where one person might be needing and the other person is able to give, and it might go in a cycle. And then that'll flip, the other person, because every relationship, not just marriage, but every relationship, except from Jesus's side, goes through this up and down thing. It's never 50-50, or rarely 50-50. You'll give what you can into your friendships and your acquaintanceships and your work ships, whatever they are, and you'll get back out of it what's available and what other people are willing to do. And the unhealthy ones, you'll note those and let them go, and the healthy ones you'll build on. And part of the building is being able to be there for others. So maybe the cycle is now you're in a position to provide, and others are in a position to receive, and that will cycle around. So what a great point, and thank you for sharing that. You're a metalhead somewhat. So out of all the people who live cast, you're talking to right now to the one who's, I love music, but I don't identify with any one genre, and I'm definitely not attached to Sanctuary because of metal. I'm also one of the 4 people that moved to the Nashville area for a reason other than music. So, and I love music. I'm musical. I have a lot of innate natural talent in that area, but it is not. But if you want to talk about music, we can so talk about music, because there's people in this chat room right now, and even within earshot. If my husband might be willing to give me some encouragement and answers in that area. Jamie says, you are wonderfully created by God with unique gifts, talents, and personality. You are made to reflect the amazing glory of God. It's a privilege to call you a brother. And that's actually Dawn saying that. Thanks, Dawn. You're so right. And Dawn's a metalhead too. And Patrick, you always ask great questions about helping with the homeless. And it's not unrelated. I mean, it's a big part of what Sanctuary is attached to here in the Nashville area. A good portion of time and effort by dozens of people in this area go towards that. So I don't know if you're talking about a specific church or if you're talking about the body. I mean, obviously we should be helping and taking care of each other, because it's our job to help and take care of each other because that's what we're supposed to do. In the United States, for sure, and it's different from city to city and state to state, but in the United States, we have entire populations now, communities, large communities of people who do not have a home. And it includes older people, it includes disabled people, it includes people who are emotionally and mentally challenged, it includes families with small children, and they are here in where I live. There are entire communities. It's not just a singular community. There are camps, communities, where people are learning to do life together and help each other because that's what we're supposed to be doing. So within their own community, they've developed their own set of moral code and hierarchy. Of course, they're still subject to the laws of the places where they live. Should they violate those laws, they would have run-ins with the law. But so what do we do for them? Well, I don't know that we need to do for them more than we're supposed to be doing for each other individually. But if you've got it on your heart to be interacting with a community of people who do not have a place to call home, how you meet their needs is to be one-on-one with them and know what their needs are. You have to do life with them. You have to spend time with them. Because it's not just food and clothing and shelter. It's relationships. And I know that you guys have heard Pastor Bob talk about this, but it's not a mystery. How we do life with each other is relationally, one-on-one. So you can have a church group want to interact with a homeless community group, but if people are, the way it's successfully done is to spend time with each other, be there for the emotional ups and downs, the celebrations of life, not just meeting the physical needs, but the spiritual and emotional needs. Hi, Dawn. I do that all the time too, where I'm logged in as one, and then I realize that I'm still logged in as the Matrix. So yeah, I get it. Oh, Patrick, I'm sorry to hear that you've been receiving hate for helping the homeless. Again, that's kind of I don't know specifically what that means, and I'm very sorry if people have been unkind to you. Because you have a heart for homeless people, and I'm not sure what that means specifically. I don't know how people would know that you're helping them and then feel that they have the energy to chide you for it and make you feel uncomfortable for that. Hopefully, it's nothing threatening, and that you just have to take the higher ground and look the other way. I mean, people, God doesn't promise us to have an easy life here. And the more Christ-like your walk, the greater ridicule and less comfortable the world will be around you. So, on a case-by-case basis, you'd have to make a determination as to what you can just put aside. And if you're, we're all wired so differently, right? So if you have such a huge heart, it might be really difficult to not feel the disdain of others or the ridicule of others, or if it is indeed even hate. I don't know, I guess try not to personalize it, right? And if you want to, but you're not alone in that either. Anytime we do things that make other people feel challenged, and especially in this, in recent years, I've noticed that people are very comfortable, especially digitally, expressing themselves vitriolically. I mean, with meanness that they would never do face to face. But that's gotten to the place now where people even do it kind of face to face. They join in large groups and behave in a very ungodly and unloving fashion. So hopefully your physical well-being is safe, and you can just know that when you're helping people, that the people you're helping, the people that you're trying to help are appreciative. And you're doing that because it recharges you, not because you need the affirmation. I'm not suggesting that's why you're doing it. I'm just saying when you help others, the feeling that the recharge that it gives you inside, because that's what God is wanting you to do. Hopefully that will supersede the negative stuff. I wish I could tell you that the negative stuff will never happen and you could have control over that, but we can't control what other people do, unfortunately. And yes, Pastor Bob Beeman and a whole bunch of others here have had backlash. And he's had not just backlash for the homeless, he's had backlash for all the years, because he's, it's cool to be a metalhead Christian now, but it wasn't always. Cool in some niches to have tattoos and be a Christian, but it wasn't always. And it's not in certain places, our ability to be judgmental about others is vast, right? It should be non-existent, but instead it's vast. Our ability to have judgments and not only have judgments, but then impose them on people by sharing our judgment in a way that a behavior could be a physical behavior or a verbal behavior. It's wrong. We don't need to be doing that. We need to love. And I think when I read that just a little bit ago, I meant this in seriousness, and I realized, God's unconditional love being visible, literally, hearten instead of discouraging one another. Why on earth anybody needs to discourage somebody from helping somebody, I do not know. So, yes, Pastor Bob has received it. Other live casters and podcasters in this group for different things we've done it. And in my life, I have certainly been on the receiving end of negative Nellies, and that's probably a generous description, right? So, and no offense to anybody if you're a Nelly. Just people are people, and be graceful and forgive and pray and move on and do what God directs you to do. And thank you for talking about it and feeling like you can here, because you can. You're welcome to do that. Amber, you say you've worked with the homeless for several years and you endured cruelty from some of them. Yes, because sometimes our circumstances are such that it changes how we are, how gracious we can be, how impatient we can be, how mean-spirited we can be. I mean, surely those of us talking right now, we've been in the position where our environment and our circumstances, our anxiety, our stress, our fears have allowed us to behave in an ungodly fashion. Sometimes pride keeps us from being able to receive help. And none of us has gotten through our lives without behaving that way. So we can certainly understand when we encounter people behaving that way to us or to others. And you just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. You don't ever want to be accepting of abuse. That's not appropriate. Whether it's verbal or physical or anything like that. But sometimes people can just be so tied up in their own knots that they can't graciously accept anything. And will find fault and maybe be vitriolic or inappropriately wordy with you. Yeah, that's so sad. I'm sorry that you experienced that. Melissa, you've been criticized for wanting to help somebody in need, but if you're led to do so, you will. That's awesome. It sounds like everybody here in this room having conversations right now is similarly inclined. I feel that if a person is really not need that's between them and God, but you've done the right thing. Absolutely. Yeah, I've said that for years. People, one of the big things people talk about often is money, being a steward of money and giving money, and then they'll go use it for something else. Well, money, time, a tent, a sleeping bag, a book, a prayer, whatever I give it freely. And after that, it's that person's to do with what they will. They are now the steward of what I've given. And I have no ties or strings to it. It was never mine anyway. I mean, it might have been in my custody, my stewardship. God led it to me, and I held it for a while, and now I've released it, and it's somebody else's, and there it is. And I truly feel that way. If I find myself thinking otherwise, I mean, in my heart of hearts, I just feel that way. My mom and dad, my mom particularly it would be upsetting to her because I'd give things she felt I probably couldn't afford to give, things that I needed for myself. But however I'm led, right? And if I find myself feeling less generous, I need to spend a little quality time with myself, right? Because, again, it's not mine in the first place. We have some very smart and very generous and very godly men and women chatting tonight, which is really wonderful. And gosh, we've already talked for an hour. That happened pretty quick, didn't it? Patrick, what people have told me is that the homeless are nothing but drug addicts and maybe alcoholics, I don't know, and don't want help, but in your heart you know otherwise. Well, and that's true, Patrick. Your heart is right. You do know otherwise. And that's, there are people with homes who are drug addicts and alcoholics and addicts of other things. Our various foibles, whatever they are, whatever our vices are, whether it comes out of a bottle or it's something that maybe we stream things and we spend more time on digital devices than we do with people, or God's got your number. God knows what he's asking you to do. He knows what he's expecting of you. He's talking to you, and that's the conversation you need to be listening to, the words you need to be listening to. So I guess we'll wrap it up tonight, because one of the things that we do need to do in my house is have a meal together, and that can't happen until I say goodnight to all of you. So it's been a pleasure. We're going to be chatting live more frequently. I believe Pastor Bob published a schedule in his weekly email, and we haven't quite ironed out exactly how we're going to do it, but we're trying to choose times where it's a good time for people in different places around the world to be able to spend some time together where we might not be conflicting with work, and offering it at different hours. And also, if you have certain things on your mind that you want to talk about. So the live chats are for you to bring your heart to, and for everybody to participate and interact. And it's been a pleasure to talk to all of you tonight. So have a great evening. And I'm sorry, Patrick. Oh, you've been homeless yourself. Well, I'm very thankful that that's no longer true for you right now. And thank you for having an open heart and helping others who are in that plight right now. All right, everybody. Good night.